this week's Parsha. So the Rebbeinu Shalom Kaviyachol tells us, V'anochi haster ponai bayoma. There'll be times of hastoras poni. Hastoras poni means Kaviyachol, that God's face, whatever that means, is not visible to us. Human beings are not aware of it. So how did Chazal define hastoras poni? We can always define it in terms of tragedy, God forbid. So we say, for instance, that during the time of the Holocaust in World War II, that was an example of peak hastoras poni. That Kaviyachol, he let it happen. He didn't prevent it. But Chazal took a different view of hastoras ponim, and not only a negative view. The Gemara says, Esther min haTorah minayin. Where do we see Queen Esther in the Torah? The Gemara there in Megillah, it says, Haman min haTorah minayin, Mordechai min haTorah minayin, Esther min haTorah minayin. So the Gemara says, Shenemar v'anochi haster ponai bayomahu. So Chazal meant here not only a play on words of Astir and Esther, but they meant to give us an insight into what hastoras ponim is. Hastoras ponim, if you read the Megillah, so we know that the Shem Hashem does not appear anywhere in the Megillah, and that the Megillah looks like it was an article, a research article by a newspaper about events that occurred in the kingdom of Persia in the 3rd or 4th century before the Common Era. It's a story of intrigue. It's a story of betrayal. And it's a story of unlikely events. Chazal wanted to emphasize to us over and over again that in life unlikely events occur. And that life is never what the experts say it is. And that Meishiv Leiv Chachomi Mochor, the Rabbi Shalom takes the heart of otherwise wise people, and he turns them on their head, so that what they were so certain of and what they were so convinced of doesn't occur, and unexpected things occur. Unpredictable things occur because of the fact that the Hashgacha Elyona, God's guidance of the world, steers things, makes things happen. The only thing is, V'anochi haster ponai bayomahu, the Rebbeinu Shalom does it without revealing himself. So you have, the Gemara says that Esther was not a particularly attractive woman. Esther Yerakroka Saisa. She had a bad complexion. She didn't look so good. So how should she win the beauty contest? And why should she be taken to participate in the charade that Achashverosh wants? And what does Mordechai do here? So none of this fits in anywhere. Yet when we are completed with the story, when we know the whole story and we see it from the end, we see it backwards, So then all of a sudden, then we see that there was Hastoras Ponim there. That somehow the salvation of the Jewish people, its survival after Haman, was all dependent upon some sorts of series of events which had no rational basis and which are, to the casual observer, are not even noticeable. It doesn't even look that way. And we have numerous incidents in human history and in Jewish history where there is Hastoras Ponim. And not only in our sense of Hastoras Ponim, as I mentioned before, negatively, which is the way we always think of it, but there's Hastoras Ponim positively as well. I always use the example of Harry Truman and Eddie Jacobson. And Truman, after the First World War, went into a business partnership with a Jew in Kansas City by the name of Eddie Jacobson, and they operated a men's haberdashery store. They sold men's clothing. And they were uniquely unsuccessful. Had Truman become successful, he never would have been president. Jacobson would have become the president of the shul. But the place went bankrupt. And the place went bankrupt, so they owed a lot of money to creditors. That's what bankruptcy allows you, so to speak, to escape from the creditors. But Jacobson, who was a very honest person, and he was a Jew that was completely, he never went to yeshiva. He's not, not the outstanding pillar of a community. But Jacobson worked for 20 years to pay back all the debts. And because he did that, Truman was able to go into politics. And then Roosevelt picked him for vice president, also an unlikely pick. And then Roosevelt died, and he became the president. He became the president, he didn't even know that America had an atomic bomb. And so here's this Missouri farmer that becomes the most powerful man in the world. So when the Zionists wanted to influence Truman that he should support the creation of the State of Israel, and the entire American State Department was against it. George Marshall said he would resign and vote against Truman. So they wanted Chaim Weizmann to go and somehow convince Truman. And they couldn't get an appointment. Truman left instructions that Weizmann is not to be allowed into the White House. So as a last resort, somebody thought about Eddie Jacobson. And Jacobson called up and he said, can I see you for a few minutes, Mr. President? He said, yes, anytime, we're buddies, Eddie. And he comes into the White House, to the office, and Truman tells him, Eddie, I don't want to hear one word about Palestine. It's the only reason that he came. He hems and he haws, and finally he blurts it out. He says, you have to see Weizmann. And he tells him, anybody that's good to the Jews' history, the Jewish people remember them. And Truman gives in, and Weizmann comes, and he convinces him, and America supports it, and because of that support, the United Nations resolution happened, and all sorts of things. So that's Hastoras Ponim. There were no thunderbolts, no lightning. Nobody saw it, right? But the Ribono Shel Olam promised us that things would happen. So things happen at His speed and in His way. And that's the idea of Hastaras Ponim. It's not only Chas v'Sholom that the negative things happen by Hastaras Ponim. Even the most positive things can also happen by Hastaras Ponim. Until we're zocheh that in this good year, the Ribono Shel Olam will show us begilui Ponim, all of the goodness that He intends for us. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash, Ratza HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'zakas es Yisrael, v'ficha chir b'leim Torah mitzvah shenemar, Adonai chafetz aman tzidko yagdil Torah v'yadir.
I'm toiling.